Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that his presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. Well, today, as we begin to close the Gospel of John, I have my good friend Bob Smith with me to help me with this video. Now, you'll recall that Jesus has just talked to Peter and told Peter the kind of death that Peter is going to die. And then Jesus says, "You follow me." And Peter looks around and he notices that the beloved disciple is following them as they have this private conversation. And so Peter says to Jesus, "What about him?" And Jesus says, "What does that matter to you? Even if I want him to live until I return, what is that to you? You follow me." And then the Gospel of John just about ends. And we get this note that this is the disciple, the beloved disciple. This is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. And we know that his testimony is true. See, the beloved disciple is the one who wrote the Gospel of John, who testified to Jesus. The Gospel of John records the beloved disciple's testimony, and we know that his testimony is true. Now, all through our time in John, I've referred to the beloved disciple as John, but there's nowhere in the Gospel of John where John is identified as the beloved disciple. In fact, the beloved disciple is never identified. We don't know who the beloved disciple is, but the tradition is that it's John. What's significant is what we see about the beloved disciple, that the beloved disciple is always close to Jesus. The beloved disciple was the one who was close to Jesus at the supper, so that when Jesus started talking about being betrayed and Peter wanted to know who the betrayer was, Peter wasn't close enough to Jesus to ask Jesus, so he asked the beloved disciple who was leaning right next to Jesus. The beloved disciple is the disciple that followed Jesus all the way to the cross, so that when Jesus is dying on the cross, he sees the beloved disciple there at the foot of the cross and says to the beloved disciple, "Behold your mother." And the beloved disciple takes Jesus' mother into his home from that point on. The beloved disciple was the one who ran to the empty tomb, and then when he went inside, he's the one who saw and believed. And it was the beloved disciple, once they caught that huge catch of fish, that was the first to recognize that it was the Lord who was on the shore and told them to cast on the right-hand side of the boat. See, the beloved disciple is always close to Jesus. And it's this disciple that wrote the Gospel of John. Well, at least the first edition of the Gospel of John. This is the disciple. The beloved disciple is the disciple who wrote these things, who testifies to these things, and we know that his testimony is true. Now, we could ask, who is the we? Well, probably disciples of the beloved disciple. We don't know them by name. We just know them as we. What's more significant is the beloved disciple. We see the kind of relationship that the beloved disciple had with Jesus. And by process of elimination, that was probably John. And so John wrote the first edition, and then the edition we have is the product of the we. We know that his testimony is true. So why not name John John? Why call him the beloved disciple? Well, I doubt that John called himself the beloved disciple. That would be a little bit arrogant. Probably what happened was that the we identified John as having an ideal model relationship with Jesus. So rather than John calling himself the beloved disciple, probably John taught his disciples, his people, that they could all have a relationship with Jesus the same way that he had. And so that he became a model for them in terms of the kind of loving relationship that could be had with Jesus. of remaining in Jesus and remaining in his love by being obedient, by listening, by loving. And so I'm guessing that when John did die and his testimony was preserved, that the we actually reworked it just a bit and took John out of it and put in the beloved disciple. And the reason why they did that is because John taught and they learned that every disciple is called to be and enabled to be a beloved disciple. And so the question isn't so much, was John the beloved disciple? The question is, are you a beloved disciple? Am I a beloved disciple? Is he a beloved disciple? And the good news of the gospel is that every single one of us is called to be and empowered to be by the Holy Spirit in a beloved relationship with Jesus, so that none of us has to be kind of a step away, but every single one of us can be a beloved disciple. So, wherever you find yourself scattered today, the good news is that Jesus died, gave his Spirit, so that you and I and he could be a beloved disciple. So what are you waiting for? Follow Jesus closely and be a beloved disciple. God bless and have a beloved day.